Sugar, tiny white crystals, so small, so innocent, yet powerful enough to shape the entire world. You pour it into your coffee, bake with it, stir it into lemonade, without ever realizing that you're taking part in one of the greatest experiments in human history. An experiment that reshaped economies, triggered wars, and built empires. An experiment that still continues in your kitchen, inside your body, and deep within your brain, because sugar isn't just sweetness. It's a chemical reward, a hit of pleasure that tells your brain, more, more, more. It's an addiction that can take hold faster than many drugs. Just a few centuries ago, sugar was more valuable than gold. It was an exclusive treasure reserved for kings and the elite. People fought for it, and they killed for it. Sugar fueled the slave trade, colonization, and the ruthless battle for global power. It was the sweet engine of empires, the foundation of fortunes, and the root of human suffering that history books still prefer to whisper about, or ignore entirely. And today? It's the ruler of the supermarket. Hidden in the products you reach for every single day, in bread, in yogurt, in ketchup, even in foods marketed as fit and healthy. Sometimes it feels like we could live without so many things, but not without sugar. It's like a silent dictator, ruling while pretending to be your friend. It gives pleasure, but steals health. It feeds the body, while starving common sense. How did something so sweet become so powerful? How did it gain control over our habits and emotions? And can we ever break free from it? This is the story of sweetness with a bitter aftertaste. A story we are all part of, whether we choose to be or not. Asterisk. Sugar is one of the simplest, and at the same time, one of the most essential compounds for life on Earth. Chemically, it belongs to carbohydrates, substances made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that serve as the primary fuel for every living organism. Every plant, every animal, every human exists because inside their cells, energy-producing reactions powered by sugar are constantly firing. Without it, there would be no movement, no growth, no thought. Evolution itself might have stalled at the level of microbes. The most basic forms of sugar are the so-called simple sugars. Glucose, often referred to as the fuel of life, is the body's primary energy currency. When it enters the bloodstream, every cell instantly knows what to do with it, converting it into the energy needed for breathing, for your heart to beat, for your brain to think, and for every tiny muscle fiber to contract. Fructose, the sugar found naturally in fruit and honey, is even sweeter, but once inside the body, it's the liver that decides what happens next. It allows us to store energy for hard times. Though in today's world of constant abundance, excess fructose can overload the body and contribute to fat buildup. Another simple sugar, galactose, plays a vital role in infant development. It's part of lactose, the sugar in milk, helping the newborn nervous system grow and thrive from the very first days of life. When two simple sugars join forces, they create more complex molecules. The most important one for humans is sucrose, one glucose molecule fused with one fructose molecule. This is the sugar that fills your sugar bowl, lines grocery store shelves, and lands on your table as those familiar white or brown crystals made from sugarcane or sugar beets. Sucrose became one of the most influential trade goods in human history, altering economies, societies, and entire continents. There are other double sugars too, like lactose in milk or maltose released when starch breaks down. But none have shaped our diet quite like sucrose. Then there are the polysaccharides, towering sugar, structures like starch and glycogen. They don't taste sweet, but they are nature's energy vaults. Plants store starch, while animals store glycogen in their muscles and liver. When needed, the body breaks these long chains back into glucose, unlocking energy on demand. All of this chemical complexity leads to one simple truth. Sugar is the foundation of biological power. When glucose enters the blood, the pancreas releases insulin, a key that unlocks cells so they can absorb and use that fresh supply of energy. But when there's more sugar than the body can burn right away, evolution steps in with its time-tested rule: save the extra for later. The surplus gets tucked away as body fat, once a life-saving strategy against starvation. Today, that same survival mechanism has turned into a silent threat, contributing to obesity, diabetes, and a cascade of metabolic disorders. Sugar is a paradox. It is the essence of life, the purest form of fuel, yet in excess, it can undermine health, disrupt brain chemistry, and hook us with the force of an addictive drug. It's like fire, essential to survive, yet dangerous when left uncontrolled. As civilization has advanced, sugar has traveled a long road from a rare treasure reserved for the elite to an omnipresent ingredient that now holds the power to shape the health of entire generations. Asterisk in nature. It has existed for millions of years. Every plant, every fruit, every drop of honey contains sugar in its natural form, embedded within the tissue of the plant or the fluid itself. Glucose in fruit, fructose in honey, these are energy in its purest form, paired with fiber, water, vitamins, and minerals. This natural matrix slows absorption, allowing the body to use sugar in a balanced, harmonious way. Every bite of an apple, every handful of berries, every sip of freshly pressed juice contains sugar. But it comes with nature's safety net, avoiding sudden spikes in blood glucose or abrupt surges of insulin. Natural sugar is part of the ecology of plants and of the human body energy that evolution designed to support life and activity. The modern world, however, has created a new dimension of sweetness: added sugar. This is sugar that doesn't grow in fruit. It's poured into ready-made foods, drinks, flavored yogurts, breakfast cereals, cakes, and pastries, sometimes as sucrose, sometimes as glucose or high fructose corn syrup. This sugar has been stripped from its natural matrix, lacking fiber, vitamins, and minerals. It enters the body almost instantly, triggering sharp spikes in blood glucose and insulin. Drinking a carton of fruit juice may feel healthy, but in reality, it can deliver as much sugar as a soda, because the production process separates the sugar from the fiber and releases it in nearly pure form. Added sugar doesn't satisfy. It doesn't nourish. It's empty fuel that shoots straight into the bloodstream, with any excess stored as body fat. The line between natural and added sugar can be confusing. Manufacturers often highlight the presence of fruit in juices or desserts. But the reality is that almost every bottle of juice, every yogurt, every granola mix contains added sugars, sometimes in amounts that exceed an adult's daily energy needs in a single serving. This floods the body with an artificial, rapid surge of energy, triggering insulin spikes, disrupting satiety cues, and launching cycles of craving that are difficult to control. While natural sugar in fruit follows the rhythm of seasons and plant biology, added sugar flows constantly and artificially, transforming diets into machines of rapid, excessive metabolic stimulation. The difference between natural and added sugar is not just chemical, it's biological and social. Natural sugar provides energy and nutrients in harmony with the body's needs. Added sugar, found in sodas, sweets, and processed foods, enters the body in excess, a concentrated burst of energy that metabolism must process immediately. Over time, this leads to metabolic disorders, weight gain, increased risk of heart disease, and hormonal imbalances. What was meant to be nourishment and pleasure becomes a hidden burden on the body, a habit that's hard to control. A nearly invisible addiction embedded in everyday eating. Natural and added sugar are two sides of the same coin. One supports life in its natural rhythm. The other invades the body rapidly and artificially, triggering reactions evolution never anticipated. Understanding this distinction is key to appreciating the power and danger of sweetness, and to learning how to enjoy it consciously, rather than becoming a slave to the invisible, constant flow of energy that, in its pure form, doesn't always serve us. Sugar is sweet because that's how evolution designed it, both in the plants that produce it and in our bodies that need it. Every molecule of glucose, fructose, or sucrose has a unique chemical structure that interacts with taste receptors on the tongue, sending a signal of pleasure to the brain. Our taste buds contain special proteins that act like sweetness sensors, activating the brain's reward centers and giving us a feeling of enjoyment. This isn't a coincidence or nature's whim. Sweetness signals a source of energy, a high-calorie substance that the body can use easily. When we eat something sweet, the brain receives a dopamine boost, the reward hormone, making us feel pleasure and satisfaction. Millions of years ago, this sensation literally meant survival. For our ancestors, sweetness meant energy-rich. Fruits, calorie-packed honey, and plants that weren't poisonous. The response to sweetness evolved as a safety mechanism. Those who didn't feel pleasure from sugar struggled to gather energy and survive. Evolution also gave us the ability to perceive sweetness more intensely than other tastes. Human babies, are born with a natural attraction to sweet flavors, ensuring they drink mother's milk, which is rich in lactose. This innate preference continues throughout life, though today, in a world overflowing with sugar, it operates in a far riskier way. Our brains still treat sugar as a reward, but modern processed foods deliver it in quantities nature never intended. The result is that a mechanism once vital for survival can now lead to overconsumption, sugar addiction, and metabolic problems. On a biochemical level, each sweet taste receptor reacts when a sugar molecule binds to its active site. This triggers a chain reaction that activates neurons in the brain, producing a sense of pleasure. In this way, sweetness is literally the language of nature saying, "Energy is here. Take it, use it, survive." This reaction is so deeply ingrained that even a brief encounter with sugar can boost concentration, improve mood, and increase energy. On the flip side, the brain quickly learns this reward, forming strong connections that make seeking sweets almost automatic. The social and cultural context cannot be ignored either. Sweetness has always been a reward, a symbol of joy and luxury. Thousands of years ago, honey and sugar were treasured commodities, and consuming them was a pleasure that brought people together during rituals, celebrations, and feasts. In this sense, our evolutionary attraction to sweetness has been amplified by culture, making sugar work on both a biological and psychological level. Eating something sweet delivers not just physical energy but also emotional pleasure. For centuries, sweet foods were associated with reward, success, and safety. Sugar has thus become more than just a source of energy. It is the language of biology, a signal of reward, a survival instinct, and a cultural element that has shaped human behavior, habits, and our relationship with food for centuries. Our love of sweetness echoes millions of years of evolution, a mechanism that once saved lives, but in the modern world has become one of the greatest challenges to health and self-control. Asterisk. The sugar we know today didn't suddenly appear in kitchens around the world. Its story begins thousands of years ago in the tropical landscapes of South Asia, where sugarcane grew, tall, slender plants with juicy, sweet stalks. It was from these plants that early humans first learned to extract sweetness. At first, sugar wasn't the white, crystalline powder we recognize today. It was a juice that, once pressed and lightly evaporated, thickened into a dark, sweet syrup or small clumps. People quickly discovered that this sweetness didn't just satisfy thirst, it provided energy and helped them survive under the harsh tropical sun. The earliest documented use of sugarcane comes from India, where over 2,000 years before our era, people knew they could chew the stalks to extract the sweet juice or boil it to create a thick mass reminiscent of today's brown sugar. Sugarcane was grown in small plantations, and processing it required patience and precision. Every step, from cutting the stalks, pressing out the juice, to evaporating the water, was done by hand. The result was the first edible sugar. This tradition was passed down through generations, and the sweet treat became a luxury available only to a select few, often used for ritual or medicinal purposes. Over time, knowledge of sugarcane spread from India to the Middle East, Persia, and Asia Minor. The Arabs not only cultivated sugarcane but also refined the processing techniques, introducing crystallization methods that allowed sugar to be transported over long distances. Thanks to them, sugar began to play a commercial role, becoming a highly valued commodity in empires, almost imbued with magical significance. In medieval Europe, sugar remained a rare luxury, imported from the Middle East and North Africa, regarded as a spice, medicine, and symbol of opulence. Sugarcane became the foundation of entire cultures and economies. Wherever it thrived in the right climate, its cultivation required agricultural knowledge, community labor, and careful harvesting. This remarkable plant sparked global trade in sweetness, connected continents, and became one of the first agricultural products of strategic importance. Sugar from cane was no longer just a plant. It marked the beginning of an industry, a symbol of wealth and power. Its sweetness spoke to people as powerfully then as it does today, albeit in its raw, unprocessed form, full of the flavor and aroma of stalks and fresh juice. The story of sugar in Europe changed dramatically with the arrival of the sugar beet. While sugarcane dominated the tropics and was available mainly through imports, it wasn't until the 18th century that European scientists and farmers discovered that the unassuming, Pale pink beet contained natural sweetness that could be transformed into sugar. Early experiments with growing and processing the beet were difficult and costly, but they soon sparked an agricultural and industrial revolution, allowing Europe to become independent from tropical imports. Though the sugar beet may look ordinary, it hides a complex process of sugar synthesis. The plant stores sucrose in its roots, using sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates. Once the beets arrive at factories, they are first washed and sliced into thin pieces called cassettes. These slices are placed in huge vats of hot water, where the sucrose dissolves, creating a thick liquid known as beet juice. The juice then goes through a series of purification steps. Lime and carbon dioxide are added to remove impurities and color, leaving an almost pure sucrose solution. The next step is evaporating the water until the sugar begins to crystallize and can be collected in the familiar form found in households. Processing sugar beets is a masterful combination of chemistry and engineering. Every stage, from pressing the juice, clarifying, evaporating, to crystallizing, requires precision to produce sugar that is clean, white, and stable. By the 19th century, Europe became a leader in this technology, with sugar factories growing into small industrial towns, employing thousands of workers and creating entire logistical systems from field to store. The sugar beet transformed sugar into a locally produced commodity, accessible to broad layers of society, no longer just a luxury imported from distant colonies. Modern sugar beet production in Europe involves vast, mechanized fields machines that sow, tend, and harvest the roots, and factories where chemical and thermal processes are computer-controlled to ensure maximum efficiency and quality. While the basic mechanism remains the same, extracting sucrose from the plant, modern technology allows enormous amounts of sugar to be produced with minimal manual labor and far fewer losses than in the past. European sugar beet production illustrates how humans have learned to work with nature, harnessing its energy in the form of sweetness in a predictable and large-scale way, laying the foundation for an industry that has shaped the diet and culture of the continent for centuries. While sugarcane and sugar beets became the foundation of industrial sugar production, sweetness in the human diet has existed in many other forms for millennia. The oldest and most natural source of sugar was honey, produced by bees from the nectar of flowers, a treasure humans discovered thousands of years ago. Harvesting honey was more than just a way to obtain sweetness. It was a ritual in itself, requiring patience, courage, and knowledge of bee behavior. Honey symbolized wealth and health, used in medicine, religious ceremonies, and as a reward. Its sweetness is unique because it doesn't come from a single molecule but from a complex mix of glucose, fructose, and small amounts of other sugars, giving honey its distinctive flavor and aroma, which change depending on the flowers and regions from which it comes. Fruits were another natural source of sugar. Berries, apples, pears, grapes all contained sucrose, glucose, and fructose, serving as concentrated sources of energy for early humans. Eating fruit was not only pleasurable but vital for survival, especially in times when calorie-dense food was scarce. Fruits are fascinating chemically as well, because their sugars are combined with fiber, vitamins, and minerals, allowing the body to process sugar slowly while benefiting from additional nutrients that support health. Humans quickly learned that dried fruits like raisins and dates were even more concentrated sources of sweetness and energy that could be stored for long periods. Honey and fruits weren't the only sources of sweetness. Ancient civilizations discovered that certain plants and plant juices could also provide sugar. Maple sap in North America, agave syrup in Mexico, cane molasses, and palm sap in Asia and Africa. All these products served as local sweeteners used in cooking and medicine. Methods of extraction varied, but the goal was the same: to concentrate the plant's natural sugar into a form that could be easily consumed or stored. People learned to cook the juices, evaporate the water, and create syrups that could be added to meals, breads, desserts, or drinks, expanding the ways natural sweetness could be enjoyed. These alternative sugar sources were often more complex than pure industrial sugar. Each product had its own flavor, aroma, and chemical profile, creating unique culinary experiences. Through them, humans discovered the diversity of sweetness and learned to adapt it to available ingredients, climate, and culture. While today refined sugar from beets or cane dominates diets, it was honey, fruits, and plant syrups that for thousands of years formed the foundation of sweetness, shaping taste, energy, and human rituals across the globe. Asterisk sugar in our bodies acts like fuel, but a very particular kind of fuel. When we eat something sweet, glucose shoots into the bloodstream, raising blood sugar levels and delivering an immediate surge of energy. It's a feeling we all know, that sudden boost. When the body and brain become more alert, thoughts flow faster and muscles feel ready for action. Evolution programmed our bodies to respond quickly to glucose because, in primitive times, every simple carbohydrate meant a chance to survive. Sugar was a rare luxury, providing energy when food was scarce and every calorie mattered. Today, however, the situation is very different. Consuming large amounts of sugar in a modern diet provides energy, but almost always without accompanying vitamins, minerals, or fiber. Refined sugar is empty calories. It fuels the body but doesn't support the immune system, build tissues, or regulate metabolic processes. When the body receives excess glucose, it activates a complex hormonal system to maintain balance. The pancreas releases insulin, the hormone responsible for transporting glucose into cells and storing it as glycogen or fat. Regularly overloading the body with sugar forces the hormonal system to work overtime. Insulin, though essential, becomes less effective under chronic glucose overload. Cells start resisting its action, which over time can lead to insulin resistance and eventually type 2 diabetes. Excess sugar also affects hormones that regulate appetite, like leptin and ghrelin, making the body crave more calories and making it harder to feel satisfied. Sugar also acts on the brain, like a psychoactive substance. Every sweet bite triggers dopamine, the reward hormone, producing a brief sense of pleasure and satisfaction. This explains why it's so difficult to resist snacking on sweets and why overconsumption can lead to cycles of addiction. The body and brain respond immediately, giving energy and pleasure. But the hidden cost is real. The hormonal system is stressed, and the body must cope with excess glucose, storing it as fat and increasing the risk of metabolic disease. At the same time, sugar provides none of the micronutrients normally needed to process energy efficiently. A diet high in sweets often lacks B vitamins, magnesium, and chromium, which means carbohydrate metabolism is less effective, and the energy fades quickly, leading a sense of fatigue and apathy. This explains why the euphoric rush after eating a slice of cake or drinking a sweet beverage is often followed by a sudden crash. Sugar delivers a quick jolt, but it costs the body far more than it seems. In short, sugar in the body is like fire. It gives warmth and light, instant energy, but if it burns uncontrolled, it can damage the metabolic structure, overload hormones, and leave the body exhausted. It's a simple chemical substance, yet a powerful physiological regulator, and in excess, its strength becomes impossible to ignore. Sugar in our brain acts like secret fuel for the reward system. When we eat something sweet, blood glucose levels rise, and neurons react instantly, releasing dopamine, the neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure, reward, and motivation. It's dopamine that makes us feel that euphoric rush from a sweet bite, the sense of satisfaction, almost bliss, that makes us reach for another serving. This mechanism makes perfect evolutionary sense. In nature, sweetness meant energy and safety, as the simple sugars in fruit and honey supported survival. Yet today's diet, overflowing with refined sugar, overstimulates this system, turning it into a trap for our brains. Sugar addiction is not an exaggeration. Scientific studies show that, similar to psychoactive substances, regular consumption of high amounts of sugar changes dopamine receptors and neurotransmitter activity. Over time, the brain needs larger doses of sweetness to achieve the same pleasure response. This explains why one piece of chocolate often leads to another, or why finishing a dessert makes us crave the next one. The body begins rewarding itself with sugar automatically, overriding signals of fullness and healthy judgment. This addictive cycle is reinforced by the speed at which sugar enters the bloodstream and reaches the brain. Glucose acts almost instantly, triggering a neurochemical reaction faster than many other foods. This creates an intense but short-lived reward. After the initial pleasure spike, blood sugar drops, leaving us fatigued, irritable, or craving more sweets. This sets up a loop. Sugar provides joy. The energy crash drives a desire for more. The reward system is repeatedly stimulated, and the brain learns to seek pleasure specifically from sweet foods. Interestingly, the sugar reward mechanism affects some people more than others. Sensitivity to dopamine, genetics, early life experiences, and childhood diet all influence how easily someone falls into this cycle. Children who consume excessive sweets from a young age often need higher doses of sugar as adults to feel satisfaction. Our brains learn to associate sugar with safety and reward, making the craving for sweets not just a matter of taste, but a deeply biological drive. But sugar doesn't just activate the reward system, it also influences hormones that regulate appetite and mood. The release of insulin, fluctuations in blood glucose, and effects on serotonin create a dynamic cycle rather than a single moment of pleasure. When sugar acts, we feel a surge of energy and satisfaction, but mood quickly dips, often prompting another sweet bite. This biological mechanism once helped humans survive famine. Today, it transforms into a trap of overconsumption and habitual snacking. That's why sugar in the diet is more than just a source of calories. It's a substance that manipulates the brain's reward system, produces fleeting euphoria, can be addictive, and works faster and more intensely than many natural pleasure signals. Every sweet bite is more than flavor. It's a chemical reaction in the brain. An evolutionary story and the biological mechanism all at once, capable of energizing us while subtly reshaping our behaviors and eating habits. When we eat sugar, our bodies immediately spring into action to process it. Every molecule of glucose, fructose, or sucrose first passes through the digestive system, where enzymes begin breaking it down. Sucrose, ordinary table sugar, is split in the small intestine into glucose and fructose. Glucose enters the bloodstream, raising blood sugar levels, which signals the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin acts like a key, opening cells to glucose, allowing them to absorb the energy needed to power muscles, the brain, and all vital processes. Fructose takes a different route, heading to the liver, where it is metabolized differently than glucose. It doesn't spike blood sugar as sharply, but when consumed in excess, the liver converts it into glycogen or fat, potentially contributing to fat storage and weight gain. This subtle but important distinction shows that sugar doesn't act as a single, uniform substance in the body. Each form has its own metabolic path and health consequences. Blood sugar, or glycemia, is tightly regulated because excess glucose can be toxic. Insulin serves as the guardian of this balance. Within minutes of eating something sweet, it begins transporting glucose to muscle cells, the liver, or fat tissue. Once the cells are full, surplus sugar is stored as fat, and the hormonal system must manage the overload. That's why a sudden sugar rush gives a burst of energy, often followed by a crash in blood sugar and fatigue, sometimes even irritability or cravings for the next sweet bite. Sugar metabolism doesn't stop with blood sugar and insulin. It also affects appetite hormones, leptin and ghrelin. Leptin, produced by fat cells, tells the brain that we have enough energy, while ghrelin signals hunger. Excess sugar can disrupt these signals, making us feel hungry sooner and more often, even if we've already consumed enough calories. The body becomes dependent on sweet stimuli, seeking the next dose of glucose to restore balance and reward. At the same time, sugar metabolism puts a strain on the pancreas. Constant fluctuations in blood sugar require the organ to produce insulin in large amounts. Over time, this strain can lead to insulin resistance when cells no longer respond effectively to insulin. This is the first step toward type 2 diabetes, as well as problems with energy storage and appetite regulation. Sugar, once a rare and precious resource for our ancestors, has now become a trap for our hormonal system and metabolism, causing health issues that were virtually unknown just a few centuries ago. The metabolism of sugar reveals that this simple, sweet substance is actually a complex biological signal, triggering a cascade of chemical reactions throughout the body. Every bite activates not only energy pathways in cells, but also hormones, neurotransmitters, the reward system, and regulatory mechanisms, all designed to protect us and provide energy in natural doses, but which, in excess, begin to act like a trap. Asterisk, as awareness of health grows and excessive sugar consumption becomes a global concern, people began seeking alternatives. This is how sweeteners emerged, substances designed to provide the pleasure of sweetness while avoiding the pitfalls of blood sugar spikes and extra calories. Sweeteners fall into two main categories: natural and synthetic, each with its own history, characteristics, and effects on the body. Natural sweeteners come directly from plants or other natural sources. The most well-known include stevia, xylitol, erythritol, and honey. Stevia, extracted from the leaves of a plant native to South America, is hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, doesn't raise blood sugar, and contains virtually no calories. Xylitol and erythritol are sugar alcohols, naturally present in fruits and vegetables, but also produced industrially. They have a sweetness similar to sucrose, provide far less energy, and have a low glycemic index, making them safer choices for people monitoring their blood sugar. Honey, maple syrup, and agave syrup are also natural alternatives, although they still raise glucose levels, just more slowly than refined sugar. Synthetic sweeteners were developed in laboratories as nearly zero-calorie alternatives. Aspartame, sucralose, asulfame K, and saccharin are hundreds of times sweeter than sugar and deliver almost no energy. They allow us to enjoy sweetness in drinks, desserts, and light products without affecting blood glucose, making them popular with diabetics and those on calorie-restricted diets. However, synthetic sweeteners are not without controversy. Long-term effects are still being studied, with some research suggesting potential impacts on the gut microbiome, appetite regulation, or even intensifying cravings for sweetness. An interesting aspect is that the brain does not respond to sweeteners in exactly the same way it does to real sugar. While the sweet taste is perceived and triggers pleasure, the body doesn't receive the calories or energy reward in the usual way. This can lead some people to feel the need to complete the experience with real sugar, creating a paradoxical effect. The sweetener delivers taste, but the brain still seeks glucose for satisfaction. It's also worth noting differences in practical uses. Xylitol is often used in chewing gum because it doesn't cause cavities. In fact, it protects teeth. Stevia works well in beverages and desserts where sweetness without calories is desired. Synthetic sweeteners dominate light and diet products, from sodas to protein bars. Each alternative has its place, but none perfectly replicates sugar's metabolic effects or flavor chemistry. The story of sweeteners is also a story of humanity confronting biological limitations. Once sweets were a luxury. Now sugar is everywhere, and sweeteners allow us to enjoy the taste of sweetness without immediately harming our health. Yet the choice between natural sugar and a substitute remains a personal decision, one that combines knowledge of biology, metabolism, and individual preference. Each of us must decide which compromises are acceptable for our own lifestyle. As sweeteners become a regular part of daily diets, their impact on the body is becoming increasingly clear, and it's far more complex than it might seem. Sugar and its substitutes interact with the metabolic and hormonal systems, but they do so in different ways, leading to both short and long-term consequences. When we consume sweeteners, especially synthetic ones, the sweet taste is detected by receptors on the tongue and immediately sent to the brain as a reward signal. The brain responds with pleasure, expecting an influx of energy. But the caloric boost never arrives. The body receives mixed signals. The taste says, "Sweet." Energy is here, while the metabolism says, "No glucose." No calories. This mismatch can disrupt appetite, increase cravings for sweets at later meals, and even alter taste preferences. As the brain continues to seek the real reward, natural sweeteners, such as stevia or sugar alcohols, act more gently. They don't cause rapid spikes in blood sugar or require large doses of insulin, which reduces the risk of energy swings and sudden hunger. Xylitol and erythritol hardly tax the pancreas and are partially metabolized in the liver or intestines. Their sweetness delivers pleasure, but the body perceives them more neutrally in terms of energy. Still, even natural sweeteners can have a laxative effect if consumed in excess and continue to stimulate a preference for intensely sweet flavors. In the diet, the long-term effects of regular synthetic sweetener use are still being studied. Some research suggests that they may alter the gut microbiome, changing the balance of bacteria responsible for digestion, glucose metabolism, and satiety signals. Disruptions in gut flora can lead to poorer glucose tolerance, increased appetite, and overall metabolic dysregulation. Other studies indicate potential effects on appetite-regulating hormones, such as leptin and ghrelin. meaning that even a low-calorie drink or dessert can leave the body craving real sugar energy. Sweeteners, though seemingly a solution for health-conscious individuals or those trying to lose weight, are not neutral. They can reduce calories and prevent sharp spikes in blood sugar, yet simultaneously maintain a preference for intense sweetness and stimulate the brain's reward system. Long-term use requires awareness. It's not just about swapping sugar for a zero-calorie substitute, but about the overall diet, frequency of sweet consumption, and gradually retraining the body to appreciate less intensely sweet flavors. In practice, this means that sweeteners can be a helpful tool, but they are not a fix for excessive sugar consumption. Like any tool, their effectiveness depends on skillful, mindful use. They can help prevent sudden blood sugar swings, support people with diabetes, and even assist in calorie reduction. But without changes in taste habits, lifestyle, and biological awareness, the impact will remain limited. Sugar is more than just a sweet indulgence for our taste buds. It is a fascinating element of the plant world, culture, economy, and science. One plant in particular, sugarcane, accounts for the majority of the world's available sweetness. For centuries, it drove trade, colonial expansion, and the economies of tropical nations. From sugarcane through grinding, juice extraction, and multi-stage purification, sugar emerged as one of the most important global commodities, once rivaling gold in value and significance. Like salt, sugar also has preservative properties. Since ancient times, it has been used to extend the shelf life of food. Honey, syrups, or crystalline sucrose became tools for survival in eras without refrigeration. Just as salt draws water out of food and inhibits bacterial growth, sugar played a crucial role in preserving baked goods, jams, and canned fruits. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of sugar is its intense sweetness. Some natural substances are far sweeter than sucrose, achieving hundreds of times its sweetening power. Stevia leaves, seemingly unremarkable to the eye, can be up to 300 times sweeter than table sugar while contributing virtually no calories. This demonstrates the extraordinary chemistry of natural sugars and the incredible diversity of their properties, from standard crystals to highly concentrated, almost magical plant extracts. Crystalline sugar can also be so pure that it appears nearly transparent, resembling glass. This is the result of multi-step purification and crystallization processes, producing white crystals that satisfy the craving for sweetness, while serving as beautiful decorative elements for dishes or even as experimental tools in chemistry. Each crystal is a microcosm of chemical precision, simple in form, yet incredibly ordered in structure. Equally fascinating is sugar's history as currency and tax. During colonial times, sugar was so valuable that it functioned as money, became a key trade commodity, and formed the basis of taxation systems. Sugar plantations in Latin America and the Caribbean fueled economies, shaped empires, and were simultaneously a source of slavery and conflict. In this context, sugar was not merely a pleasure, it was an economic force that reshaped societies and politics. From a biological perspective, sugar is nearly pure energy. It provides no vitamins or minerals, no microelements, just calories rapidly absorbed by the body. It delivers immediate energy but lacks nutritional value, distinguishing it from other foods. The body reacts instantly, generating a sudden energy surge. But this also triggers hormonal responses, including insulin production, with long-term implications for metabolism. Moreover, sugar can be produced in laboratories. Synthetic sugars, like raffinose, show that humans can replicate processes developed by nature over millions of years. This allows scientists to study the mechanisms of sweetness, develop specialized diets, and create alternatives that affect taste and metabolism in today's world. All these facts show that sugar is far more than a kitchen ingredient. It is a cultural, historical, chemical, and biological material that combines taste, pleasure, fascinating chemistry, and profound influence on civilization. Every crystal of sugar, from cane to lab, contains the story of millions of years of evolution, global economies, and human creativity. Asterisk.